Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Cancer Support Community Central Ohio's Lunchtime Learning. We're very excited to have with us today Elisabeth Mack, who is a registered nurse, and she has an MBA, and she's the founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. And today she's going to be presenting cannabis as medicine. So Elisabeth, thank you so very much for presenting today on this very timely and informative topic. And I am turning it over to you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and attention. This is an important topic. And, I've been a nurse for a long time, and I've been working with 35 years, and I've been working with cannabis as medicine for the past 8 years. So I do have a good message for you, and hopefully this will be an educational hour where you can learn something and then take that and go forward. So we're going to be talking today about cannabinoids and cancer. So cannabinoids, THC, CBD, we're going to break all that down as we go forward. So let's go. I always like to start these presentations with a little bit of a history of, what's going on with our body when we have cancer and what it is. Cancer is a disease of overgrowing cells and a proliferation of cells in a way that can be harming to the body, and it affects people without boundaries. Everybody and anyone can get cancer, and carcinogenesis is when the cancer cells lose their ability to regulate the rapid growth. So they multiply, they divide, and then DNA mistakes can cause abnormalities. The American Cancer Society finds that 50% of all men and 33% of all women in America will develop cancer over their lifetimes. So it is an important thing to manage. There are over 200 different types of cancer, and cancer can spread through the lymphatic and circulatory system, which is how people can develop a second cancer in other sites that are unrelated. Okay. So how do we treat cancer? Most of the time, these are our treatment options, right? And they're interchanged. We can do surgery, we can do chemotherapy, radiation, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, and a lot of times these are used interchangeably and in different courses, back and forth. Sometimes we'll use chemotherapy first until we can shrink tumors, and then we try to use surgery, and then we add radiation therapy on top of that. So I know many of you are going through all of those at some point or another, or considering them. But there are side effects, right? To every one of those treatments, there is side effects. And, one of the first ones is nausea and vomiting, fatigue and insomnia, anxiety and coping issues, appetite and weight loss, hair loss, neuropathy, body aches, bone pain, lymphedema, DVT, deep vein thrombosis, graft-versus-host disease, mucositis, menopause can be caused early, skin rashes, motivation loss, and apathy. And these are some of the things that when patients come to us, we need to discuss, because my job as a cannabis clinician is to help people cope with some of these side effects, treat them, and give them a better day. But all of these are not always what people are going to experience. Again, it comes and goes. So let's talk about, what some of the cannabis cancer options are and how this might work. Because people are getting more and more exposure to it and saying, is this something that could be an alternative for me, and how do I use it? Well, cannabis as medicine is not really new. We have been using cannabis as medicine for a long time in this country. In fact, in 1854, we had cannabis in our pharmacopoeia, which is the list of drugs that we use in America in our formulary, right? So the insurance carriers have a list of drugs that they cover. By 1920, cannabis extracts were marketed by some of the big pharmaceutical companies. But in 1937, we had something called the Marijuana Tax Act, which prohibited cannabis, calling it marijuana and demonizing the people that used it. It was rather largely racially motivated. In the South, Mexicans and Blacks were smoking, and the prohibitionists didn't like that. And there was a lot of corporate interest happening at that time as well. People were using hemp. In fact, Ford was making his first cars out of hemp, very durable, strong construction. But the steel industry didn't like that, and lots of other things. So anyway, there was a lot of things going on. And by 1941, cannabis was removed from the pharmacopoeia. and taken out of the ability for us to use this as cannabis as medicine. So there were, of course, people that were up in Northern California and other pockets throughout the whole world that were still growing cannabis. And then in 1970, this is when it became illegal. So Richard Nixon created the Controlled Substance Act. There are different classes of drugs, and cannabis was slated into Schedule 1. Schedule 1 means that there's no medical benefits, it's highly addictive, dangerous, and abusive, and that it should basically never be used. So what do we have in Schedule 1? Heroin, LSD, PCP, and those drugs don't have medical benefits, but obviously cannabis does. And in 1996, California was the first state to bring medical marijuana programs to the people, passing Proposition 215 back in 96. So that a doctor could write a recommendation and a patient could then be able to access cannabis in the dispensaries, which were starting to open then. And in 2022, 2023, we're sitting at 37 medical states, and now we're up to 21 for recreational or adult use. And that means you don't need a medical card. Ohio is still a medical state only, so you do need a prescription for the access to the dispensary, and then you can go shop, and we can talk about that later. So cannabis is a plant. It's a healing plant. One of the first things I like to talk about is this has been a plant that has been growing among us for millions of years. We've found that it has been used medically for 5,000 BC in the early stages, but it has been with us always. And it's one of the richest plants on Earth. There are about 500 natural compounds in this plant, and we call the main compounds cannabinoids. Cannabis, cannabinoids, right? So there are different things. There's cannabis, there's terpenes, there's flavonoids. And all of these plant compounds or phytonutrients are influenced by the strain, the soil, the climate, and the cultivation, and how we grow it. One of the most exciting things about cannabis is that it is pleiotropic. And we're going to talk about the pharmacology. When we take this plant in, where does it go in the body? What does it do? And it's active in many different receptor targets all throughout our body. And that gives it the name pleiotropic. Pleiotropic is a scientific word, meaning that it can change or act on almost every physiology in the body simultaneously. And I call this very effective efficiency. So if you watch the nightly news, you see that you can take this drug and you're going to get a bunch of these side effects. With cannabis, you take this medicine and you might be able to see a lot of relief. People can use cannabis for appetite, for pain, for anxiety, for sleep, etc., all at the same time. And that is what, to me, is so special about this plant, because we can help people to wean many different pharmaceuticals and use this one medicine in many ways. So let's talk about how this acts in the body. When we use cannabis, what happens? Well, we activate what we call the endocannabinoid system. This is a scientific discovery back from the 60s and the 70s and 80s and 90s. We isolated and synthesized THC and figured out the molecular structure, put it into the body with radioactive imaging, and we light up like a Christmas tree when these compounds are introduced to the body, because there are receptor targets. And when we're like, why are we having all of these receptors? We can't be hardwired for this plant, but we are, because of these receptor targets. And what happens is that the cannabinoids activate the same receptor targets that our own endogenous cannabinoids, our endocannabinoids, are activating. And so they found these receptors based on tracing THC into the body. And we found CB1 activates the central channel and a lot of receptors in the brain. In fact, more receptor targets in the brain for cannabinoids than any other neurotransmitter system. So CB1 is largely in the central channel. So our pain, our memory, our emotions, our motor functions, our moods, and appetite, temperature, etc. CB2 is largely in the periphery and almost all of our immune cells. So our immune cells have these CB2 targets on them, and we're going to come back to why that's important soon. So cannabis works via the endocannabinoid system. So we know that it is going into the body, it is active, and we understand it because of the research into CBD and THC starting back in the 60s. And that helped us to identify that all 11 body systems, our circulatory system, our endocrine system, our lymphatic system, our digestive system, our nervous system, all of these respond to the endocannabinoid system through this, what we call retrograde signaling. And it's just back and forth messaging. Most of the time things flow one way, but the endocannabinoids can give that, that feedback to alert the body on what's going on in a way of balancing. And we'll talk about homeostasis in a minute. But we produce these endocannabinoids like we produce the narcotic-like endorphins. And it's the same way. When our body needs something, it can synthesize and make it. And then we have this lock and key response. So we talked about the receptors. Think about little doorbells on a cell. If you ring the doorbell, something happens inside the house. That's exactly what's going on in the endocannabinoid system. If you activate this target, we can relieve things going forward in a way of getting us back to balance. And when the body is deficient in the endocannabinoids, like we fall deficient in anything else, we're deficient in vitamin D, we're deficient in things, we can supplement because we get chronic conditions when we have deficiency. So the supplementation with phytocannabinoids, the plant nutrients, can help address the symptoms and the cause, because these phytocannabinoids, THC specifically, can mimic the endocannabinoids, restoring balance. The most fascinating thing is that these plant nutrients actually activate the same receptors in our body that are responsible for this homeostatic regulatory system of feedback and making sure that we stay healthy. So the role of the endocannabinoid system in health and disease flows through everything. I like to say it's like a river runs through it. Every system in our body has nerve cells that have endocannabinoid receptors. And when we activate them, we can bring our body back into balance. So if you think about all of these communication systems, imagine if you're with your spouse and you were talking, but you couldn't talk, nobody could talk back. Sometimes that's what happens. And the endocannabinoid systems are sensing. It's like a supercomputer or switchboard where the operator is sensing distress and manufactures an endocannabinoid to float backwards to the presynaptic membrane, plug into that receptor and say, this is too much or too little of something. We need to restore balance. And then that's what happens. So you can see when we've got endocannabinoids in the brain, in the heart, the lungs, the digestive system, we can restore balance wherever it is. And when we can put these phytonutrients into the body systemically, into the bloodstream, they can travel around and fulfill a mission throughout the body to bring us back to balance. So what is this endocannabinoid system responsible for? I like to say eat, sleep, relax, forget, and protect. And that was coined by a scientist back in Italy, Vincenzo Di Marzo, when he first discovered what all of the responsibilities of the ECS were. So all of our basic functions, our appetite, digestion, blood pressure, blood sugar, immune functions, our mood, our memory, our pleasure, our reward, dopamine, all of our neurotransmitters are affected by the endocannabinoid system. They regulate those too. Our pain, our reproductive functions. In fact, a mother's breast milk is the richest source of endocannabinoids on earth. And when she's giving that milk to the baby, she's building the immune system for that baby and laying down the tracks. And of course, sleep, our circadian rhythms, very affected by the endocannabinoid system. And of course, temperature. You can be too hot, take THC, bring the temperature down. Sometimes it's very beneficial for menopausal women. So, these are the governing systems on why we could introduce cannabis into the body. And it's always complementary to me. As I said, I've been an RN for the past 35 years. I've been in conventional systems for a long time. And know that cannabis is complementary to everything else. So it's used in addition to conventional care. I always like to start that first because people will come to me and say, can I use cannabis as a therapeutic option? And I'm like, well, maybe, but what else are you doing? And let's talk about how to support that. It's a natural compound. Your body recognizes it. That's why I like to talk about the endocannabinoid system. It's not going in and not activating targets that we don't know about. We know what the body does, and the body knows these compounds. Now, it's all about dosing. So, we want to talk about gentle with proper use. My job as a cannabis nurse is to help people to maximize the benefits, minimize the harms, and not have side effects. So we want people to benefit from the palliative relieving discomfort effects that we can get from these compounds. And a lot of times I like to talk about how it's safer than many pharmaceuticals. We don't have long-term side effects and complications with cannabis that we do with some of the other pharmaceuticals that might be more harmful. And the good thing about cannabis is that it's body, mind, spirit. The mind can rest, the body can be healed, and the pain can be reduced, really giving people reduced symptoms and a better quality of life for that day. So what about cannabis for cancer? Is it curative? Can it help shrink cancer cells, restrict nutrients, and stop it from spreading? Maybe. This is being researched, but we know that it's palliative. We have a lot of observational data that people are using it to help them eat, show up at the dinner table, be able to have an appetite, not be so nauseated, not vomiting, keeping their food down, relieving pain, anxiety, and helping sleep. And if we can help people with that, then that's a win. Cannabis for the treatment of cancer has been investigated for many years and is ongoing, but it's mainly in the preclinical stage. So Aunt Zelda is an oil maker in California, has been making oils for the past decade here. And there's a scientist named Justin Kander who says when cancer cells are exposed to cannabis, they experience apoptosis, which is that programmed cell death. Cancer cells die, healthy tissues remain, and the phytocannabinoids appear to be a biologically ideal solution to cancer. In cell and animal models, cannabinoids exert anti-cancer activity against most cancers, and their generalized therapeutic effects indicate that it may fight cancers at some level. So this is a book. It's available on Amazon. I've read it. It's a little bit of a thick scientific book, but it explains the details of how cannabis might work as a therapeutic option. So if anybody wants to read the science, you can. But when we're talking about why we want to use cannabis, regardless of whether or not it has anti-cancer properties as a palliative. So I keep going back and forth, right? Curative versus palliative. We don't know if it's curative because we're not researching in people because of the Schedule 1, but we are seeing patients using it to reduce muscle pain and tension, reduce that nausea and vomiting, even the anticipatory nausea and vomiting with chemo. There are studies from the NIH. Don Abrams is a very famous oncologist up in San Francisco, has been working with the National Institutes of Health, doing programs and studying patients in an observational way up in their units in the cancer center there. And he has proven this, that nothing else helps with the anticipatory nausea, but cannabinoids can. And we don't know why, but it does. So that preconception that I'm going to get sick and I'm already sick before the chemo even hits me. Stimulating and increasing the appetite, stimulating the bowel activity and peristalsis, that can help with some of the sluggishness or maybe too much motility. It can maybe slow it down. THC can slow things down. CBD can speed things up. Immune support and balancing. Our immune system is so important. It is the checkpoint. It is what keeps us well and healthy. And we need to make sure that it has everything it needs. Cannabis can balance cortisol and stress hormones, increase mobility by reducing pain. This is really good for chronic pain patients. How do I get you to move? Which motion is the lotion. If it hurts too much, you're not moving. Can we use cannabis to facilitate mobility? That stimulates and balancing the nervous system, moisturizing skin and breakdown. Sometimes we use topicals on skin issues. We can treat mild skin cancers and then also to soothe. And can also improve peripheral neuropathy. This is also being studied, chemo-induced peripheral neuropathy in the hands, the feet, CBD and CBG, and some of the acidic compounds are being shown to be very good for that. On the mental and emotional side, we can decrease anxiety, increase relaxation. Cannabinoids activate CB1 receptors in the brain, bringing that back to balance and getting us out of fight or flight, promotes sleep, aids in insomnia. Dosing is all very important here on how you take it for sleep. It can decrease fatigue and boost energy. And cannabinoids are what we call biphasic. So small doses are stimulating, large doses are sedating. So very small doses of CBD, CBG, THCV in the morning can give us boosts of energy, improve cognition, and give us some abilities to laugh, respond to humor, getting back to our body, mind, spirit. It works on everything to help us improve our feelings of well-being, improves self-image and body awareness, reduces feelings of isolation. That's sitting there that you're all alone. You know that you're not when you have some cannabinoids in the treatment plan, and giving you that internal sense of calm despite external chaos. This is what the ECS does. It regulates homeostasis so that we are having that strong center of calm regardless of what's happening around us. Our internal situation can be at balance. And of course, patient empowerment and self-determination. A lot of times you get a cancer diagnosis and it feels like you got to make decisions immediately, which you don't. Cancer has been growing in your body for 10, 15 years before we even know it. So you have some time to think about this. You have your own path to forge. Don't have anybody making your decisions for you. Be strong in your decisions. And again, reinforcing that body, mind, spirit. This is not a single molecule pharmaceutical that you put into the body and get an effect. No, it is something that is bathing the central nervous system and all of those physiologies so that it is a whole thing on body, mind, spirit. This is the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, which is the new term for the NIH in Washington. Their last report on cannabis and health effects of cannabis and cannabinoids studied over 10,000 studies on cannabis, a literature review of all of the studies that were done. And their conclusion was that there is conclusive evidence that cannabinoids are effective antiemetics in the treatment of chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting. And so that is why we have Marinol, dronabinol. It's a synthetic THC, 2.5 to 5 milligrams. You can take that and mitigate some of the nausea and vomiting, maybe stimulate some appetite. A lot of times people don't like that pill, though, because it's pure THC. And without something to counterbalance it, it can feel too strong and dysphoric for patients. So, you have to be working on this as a clinical therapeutic option. So you're looking at the totality of what we're doing here. So there's a company called GW Pharmaceuticals. They're now going by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. They were sold for about $7 billion a few years ago. Glioblastoma and cannabis is something they're working at. They have a drug called Sativax, which is a 1-to-1 oil, half CBD, half THC, and they're using that for MS and spasticity and for chronic pain, opioid-resistant chronic pain up in Canada. Sativax is actually on the market in about 30 different countries. It is not approved yet in America, though. So they are trying this to see if it can enhance the effects of Temodar, one of our first-line treatments for glioblastoma. And they found that it is increasing one-year survival rates as opposed to just going with the drug alone. And we are going to have more and more of this research. But again, it's because of the Schedule I status, it's very hard to study with people. They may have needed to look at just the patients that had MS that got cancer, but who knows? It's very difficult to study this with people. And that's why, we're getting all of our knowledge from observation, from patients that are coming back and working with clinicians like myself and reporting on how they're using this. So one of the things I like to talk about is how to use cannabis with the other concurrent therapies. Immunotherapies, if you are able to get immunotherapy and you are a good candidate for that, you want to do that first. You want to make sure that we maximize that immunotherapy protocol. And they depend on robust helper T cell proliferation for the anti-cancer effects. We want to stir up the inflammation to get those T cells to march in and neutralize the cancer cells. So we want to minimize cannabis use with immunotherapies, such as Keytruda and Opdivo and some of the other ones, because there's an anti-inflammatory immunosuppression effects from THC. And with high doses, we might see that. So what we want to do is use THC in smaller doses just for comfort care. So 25 milligrams per day is sort of the standard that we are talking about. And then with chemotherapy, cannabinoids may potentiate chemotherapy and lessen the side effects. So we can slow down some of that nausea and vomiting and maybe peripheral neuropathy, but we can also look at maybe potentiation. And that is something that you need to work on with your physician who's giving you the chemotherapy, because sometimes these receptors and the cancer cells can be right next to each other, and cannabinoids and the chemotherapy can plug in and create a stronger molecule that would really lock down and kill that cell. So the take home here is you might be able to use less dosing on the chemotherapy, which would be less toxic to you. So again, it's a conversation that you want to have with your physicians. Patients are using cannabis. This is a busy slide, so I'm sorry about that, but we're studying how people are using cannabis. People that have breast cancer are surveyed, and in America, 42% reported using cannabis for the relief of symptoms, including pain, insomnia, anxiety, stress, nausea and vomiting, etc. Almost half of the cannabis users believe that medical cannabis could be used to treat the cancer itself. 79% had used it during treatment, including systemic therapies, radiation, and surgery. And only 39% had discussed it with any of their physicians. So our message is, please be honest if you are using cannabinoids, because these participants are using this to address symptoms, half believed that cannabis could treat it, and most participants believed that cannabis was safe and were unaware that the product quality varied widely and depended on the source. So that's the other thing. You need to make sure that your medicines are vetted, that they have been tested, that they have certificates of analysis, they're free from contaminants, toxins, and pesticides, and that sort of thing, because these are plants, they grow. We want to make sure that some of the oils that you're taking are free from any kind of residual solvents and that sort of thing, and that you're doing the right things. So it really does need to be approached as not just smoke a joint when you don't feel good, but this is a real therapeutic option. And we need to give people hope, because, there are a lot of drugs that are being put into the system through the FDA process that are not effective, and we know it, and we need to give people better options, which is why the NIH is starting to study cannabis. There is this preclinical research, which is in cell cultures and animal studies, mice, rats, etc. How does this work in them? But the National Cancer Institute has a very thick version of cannabis and cannabinoids. There's a professional version and there's a patient version. So I implore you to go to cancer.gov and check out some of these resources that are available. And finally, the really good news is that they are looking into cannabis and cannabinoid actions. So when we say cannabis has therapeutic options, we can say that the NIH is backing it up, and eventually we'll know how this works in people. As we start to limit the restrictions, and last year we know that President Biden reduced the restrictions on studies and how to access better cannabis products than just what's grown at the University of Mississippi, which supports all of the National Institute of Health research in this country. It was only one farm, and it had very substandard cannabis. So now they're allowing cannabis to be studied from different pockets around our country, and looking at how it is really a therapeutic option that might be able to relieve all of these symptoms and the biological mechanisms underlying cancer, because that is what we need to do. And when you think of cancer versus genetic versus molecular and metabolic, we're looking over here that the metabolic approaches to cancer seem to be the way to go forward to really lock it down and get the body back to wholeness as soon as possible, as opposed to just doing a couple of different things and looking for results. So let's break down the cannabis that is available in dispensaries. There are about 140 different cannabinoids in this plant. I told you there's about 500 different compounds. Some scientists think it's about 3 times that, and we have 1,500 cannabinoids. But again, this is in very early stages, and most of the research is being done in Israel on that. So THC is the psychoactive cannabinoid. It actually binds to the CB1 and the CB2 receptors. THC is used very strategically. We want to use a little bit of it to activate those receptors, bring them back to balance, and restore homeostasis. So we don't know what the potency is going to need. That's why we need monitoring. So how much do you need? Enough to do the job, but not too much to have side effects. CBD is a non-psychoactive cannabinoid, and it works as an assist. CBD is active at about 70 molecular targets throughout the body. It can activate our serotonin systems. It's directly calming for the 5-HT. It activates that, helps you make more serotonin. That can reduce anxiety. Can help with sleep. It can help with feelings of well-being. CBD is very anti-inflammatory. It can turn down some of the inflammation in the body, giving you less pain and that sort of thing. There are other cannabinoids, the acidic versions, THCA and CBDA, very good for stimulating immune health, CBGA as well. CBG is a good anti-inflammatory and helps us make more anandamide, helps us activate more of our own internal system. THCV can be helping for focus and energy and metabolism and weight loss and insulin sensitivity and helping our metabolic functions. CBN can help us rest and slow down some of the neuroexcitement in our brain that fires when we have too much glutamate. And Delta 8 is something that is available to more people that are able to buy CBD, like in a CBD store. Delta 8 is something that is made from hemp, so it's legal, kind of, and people are using it for pain. And it's really a great, for a clinician, it's a great first step to use CBD and add some Delta 8 for patients that need a little bit more than just CBD. And then we can use THC as we need to. But at the end of the day, what we want to talk about is the entourage effects. So I want you to think about, this is the land of and, not or. It's not CBD or THC, it's and. It's all of these. Because when you go to the symphony hall and you listen to that orchestra, you don't want to just hear that soloist. You want to hear all of these different voices in the orchestra. We want them to come together and play that beautiful music. That's exactly how it is here. 1 + 1 + 1 is not 3. It's more like 30 when you put these phytonutrients together because they work better together. So we want whole plant medicine. And CBD and THC, when you use them together, CBD softens THC and CBD enhances THC. So the psychoactive effects that people fear from THC can be mitigated by CBD. CBD kind of gets into that CB1 receptor, and it's what we call an allosteric modulator. So it allows THC to lock on, but not so strong. So it's going to help the THC do what it needs to relieve pain, turn down those volume signals on pain, but it's not going to be compromising when CBD is present. And again, dosing matters. But you know, it's something that we need to talk about because people have a phobia of THC, and it actually really is needed, but in small doses. And what's wrong with a little bit of euphoria, a little bit of I can smile again. You know, I'm not feeling so stressed. I'm not feeling so angry. You know, we talk about Oscar versus Elmo. If you remember Sesame Street, you know, some of us walk around like Oscar. We want to be a little more like Elmo. And can we use a little bit of THC to promote that? And then THC enhances CBD. CBD can be very worthwhile, but sometimes on its own, it doesn't work well enough. And a small amount of THC, even in a full spectrum hemp oil, is sufficient to get that entourage effect, to be able to give us the benefits. So we give this in ratios. If you work with us, you'll hear me talk about 1-to-1, 4-to-1, 10-to-1, 20-to-1. That's the relativity of THC to CBD. And generally CBD is given first. So 20 parts CBD, 1 part THC. New York sometimes puts the THC first. So you really have to be cognizant when you're looking at these products on how they work. But really, you know, it helps us maximize the benefits and minimize the harms when we use them together. So for for some. There we go. So there are many routes of administrations. When you go to the shops, the dispensaries, we can look at vaporization, which is buying joints, pre-rolls, vapes. We can look at edibles, some of the chocolates, the gummies that people eat, the capsules that you can take, sublingual dosing, sublingual strips, sublingual tinctures, topical balms, transdermal patches, and suppositories. There are a lot of different options in a dispensary, and our job is to help people mix and match and stack. That's a really important thing. Again, it's not just or, it's and. You can use vaporization when you need short acting. You can use capsules and edibles when you need long acting. You can use tinctures for your daily medicines and the every 4 to 6 hour dosing. You can use topicals on the surface area when you have localized pain, etc. So let's break down a couple of these and talk about how to use them. The benefits of inhalation is that it's immediate. People don't want to wait around when you're really nauseated, when you're really anxious, when you're just in a pinch. You can have a small puff, a little sip off of a vape pen, breathe out. Within a couple of minutes, you can have a little bit of a reduction in symptoms, and it doesn't last that long. So duration is only 1 to 3 hours. So take a puff, wait 5 minutes, reassess, see if you need another one, repeat if you do, and then repeat every 2 to 4 hours. So, that's sort of how I teach patients to fold this into the plan. Inhalation provides rapid relief from nausea, angst, and pain. Vaporization is healthier due to non-combustion. Sparking that and combustion, lighting something, breathing that in. Vaporization uses lower temperatures, so it's healthier to the lungs. Inhalation also grants access to terpenes that synergize with CBD and THC to provide their own medicinal benefits, right? Terpenes, we can talk about those later. That's kind of in a 201 class, but it does help. And pain benefits most from that 1-to-1, where we have that CBD and THC both present at the same time. Most of these vape pens are in THC. At the CBD shop, of course, you can find CBD. You could get a THC and a CBD one and have a little puff off of both, or you could find a 1-to-1 CBD THC pen. The relaxing strains like indica are preferred. Sometimes people can use sativa to have a little bit more energy. I use that for, like, if somebody needs to get active for a dinner party, somebody's coming over, take a puff, give me a little bit of extra energy, versus indica, which is where you want to relax, lay down, get rid of some pain, go to sleep. Linalool, so these are the terpenes. Linalool can calm, limonene can energize, pinene can also energize and provide clarity and mental benefits. Beta-caryophyllene also activates those CB2 receptors on the immune cells, helping us to have anti-inflammatory effects, and can also be very calming. On the tinctures, we have an onset within 15 to 45 minutes. So you put the drops under your tongue. The duration is about 4 hours. And what I tell people to do is kind of swish the drops. So you see the little bottles, liquid medicine, and really we have brought liquid medicines to light with cannabis formulations, because in America we were mainly just on pills. So I have to teach people how to take a liquid medicine. So you put the drops in your mouth, sort of swish it around to paint the surface area of your mouth, because it can go right through the bloodstream in the mouth. Before you swallow, there are very many blood vessels in the mouth that cannabinoids can just go right through like a sponge, and then the rest goes through into digestion and through the body. But we also have the benefit of very consistent dosing. So you know exactly how much you're getting, but you have to calculate the potency, because some of these bottles, they'll be 300 milligrams. Sometimes it'll be 3,000 milligrams. So is this 10 milligrams per mil or 100 milligrams per mil? And so we talk about dosing with people, and of course, different ratios and formulations of CBD, THC, as well as the minor cannabinoids, CBD, CBG, CBN, THCV, all of those that we talked about. And there are daytime, nighttime formulas. So we can rotate through, but depending on what we need. The topicals are a good thing for outside, right? So tinctures are inside, topicals are outside. I've had 3 shoulder surgeries, which is how I got introduced to CBD back almost 10 years ago. I use a topical a couple times a day still, as well as my tinctures 3-4 times a day. So topicals, you rub it on, onset is in about 10 minutes, duration 3 to 4 hours. You can apply often and at bedtime. I always put it on. It helps me reduce that pain so I can sleep. CBD and THC both activate CB1 and CB2 receptors in the skin, and there are a lot of them. So again, these receptors are all over, and these phytonutrients can plug in there to reduce some of the surface area pain. CBD penetrates a little bit better, smaller molecule than THC, but both of them work. Many of these products are formulated with calming essential oils as well, so they can be very pleasing to the scent and aromatherapy sorts of things. There are transdermal patches. Medical states have these more than the adult use states. Back in California, when I first started working in this, in 2015, there were patches everywhere, and now we can't find them because there's not a market demand. Things have shifted more to a recreational adult use market, and patches aren't found so much anymore, but they are good, and a lot of patients can have this. If you know you're going to be in a JAG where there's a lot of nausea, a lot of issues, transdermal patch can really help you get through for a long period of time. So a topical only penetrates the skin's surface area. It does not get into the bloodstream, whereas a transdermal can actually launch into the skin through the bloodstream because it has these activators that penetrate down into, just like a nicotine patch, promoting down into the bloodstream. Same thing with these. Patches can provide basal continuous dosing for 24 to 48 hours. And they come in CBD, THC, 1-to-1. I've even seen like a THCA, a couple of different types of patches. Mary's Medicinals has patches, CBD patches that they sell nationally. So apply on a clean skin without hair, and onset is in about 20 minutes. These are something that is an option. So side effects of CBD and THC are all dose dependent. You'll hear me say that repeatedly. Small amounts, you don't have side effects. Large amounts, you do. So it's all in the dosing and how we approach this. With THC, you can get some dizziness, a disorientation, intensified awareness, short-time memory impairment, anxiety, slow reactions, low blood pressure, low blood sugar, tachycardia, bronchodilation, opening the blood vessels, sedation, muscle relaxation, increased appetite, and red eyes. Again, dose dependent. Low blood pressure, low blood sugar. We want to make sure people are hydrated. We want to make sure they're fed. Again, this is could be in high dosing. So if people are very immune compromised and sensitive, we want to talk about how to use this and make sure that you have the best response. And CBD, dizziness and hyperactivity, sedation, this is the biphasic. So 10 milligrams of CBD might be alerting and stimulating. 100 milligrams might put you to sleep. Same formula. So you can have some loose stools, and many times this is from olive oil and some of the mix that people are putting the CBD into. CBD can be in MCT oil, olive oil, hemp seed, grapeseed oil, and you can try different variations of that if you do have any stomach upset. Cytochrome P450 enzymes, these are the enzymes that process our medications. They also process cannabinoids. So we want to space the cannabis dosing, oral, tinctures and capsules, etc., with the pharmaceuticals by about an hour. Take the pharmaceuticals first, allow them to work through the body a little bit, and then take your cannabis dosing. There is no lethal dose. So that's the best thing about this. You can never overdose on cannabis because there are no receptors in the brainstem that control our respirations and cardiac functions like we do with opiate receptors. So you can't overdose. Side effects, if any, appear dissipate over time, 4 to 6 to 8 hours. They should be out of the body. Sometimes if people have too much THC, you can relieve that with a little bit of a CBD dose, because again, remember, it changes the way that THC locks onto that receptor. So you can also eat some black pepper, lemon, and take food and fluids to reduce THC. Safety precautions, there is a phrase called start low, go slow. With THC, CBD first, then the ratio products, then adding more THC as you build tolerance, because tolerance builds. Just like you can take opiates and over time they don't work so well, same thing with THC. It's not that it stops working, but you stop noticing it. So you build the tolerance, which is how some people that want to take large doses of THC can do so. They acclimate slowly, and over a couple of weeks, they can get up to higher dosing. And again, it's dose dependent. So as you take higher milligrams, you're going to have increased side effects. And this is no big deal. If you go too much, the next time you just back down. And dosing can be 10 milligrams to 500 milligrams a day. Some people here, you need to take a gram a day for 90 days. You don't. We don't need that. Sometimes 5 milligrams per kilogram is sufficient. Sometimes we don't need nearly that much. And it's all patient dependent. This is very, very personalized medicine. It should always be patient-centered care, but with cannabis, it truly is. We need to individualize this. Taking cannabis products with food and staying hydrated is very important. Space 60 minutes from other medications to limit interactions. Don't drive, operate machinery, or work when you're acclimating to THC. If you're going to vape or smoke, it's always good to have somebody else present in case there's any anxiety. Just always stay calm, nice and warm, just relax, and just be hopeful, because these products can work. You just have to figure out how. And tracking is one of the best ways that we can do this. I always have my clients use a tracking log. So 1 to 10, where are we starting at on pain, anxiety, your memory, your focus, your joy, your mood? How easy is it to smile today? And then I'm going to ask you again in 3 weeks when we talk again, are we getting better? How is your energy levels? How are you sleeping? What are the changes to your blood pressure, your blood sugars? Because cannabis can improve this. I see many people that are able to reduce insulin over time, metformin, because their sugar numbers are better. Their blood pressure is better. You might not need so many blood pressure pills. Sometimes you have 1, 2, 3 of them. So we want to talk about this, which is why you have to have your prescriber on board and knowing what you're doing. These are not covered by insurance. This is one of the biggest barriers to coverage. Well, I spent 20 years in insurance companies when I got my MBA in healthcare administration, and we are working on getting CBD and other things into the insurance paradigm so that one day we have coverage for this. But until it's descheduled and taken out of Schedule 1, we don't stand a chance. But someday there will be some benefits, I know, for these products. But right now, these are about the cost. I tell patients, got a budget about $150, maybe $200 a month to really make this option worthwhile. I know that's tough, but it's worth it when you think about having a better quality of life. And again, you're going to probably need one of each of these. There is some definitions in terms. When you go to the shops, they're called dispensaries. They are where you can purchase cannabis. There is a bud tender there, which is a sales employee who can tell you what products might help and how they might work. They are retail employees. They are not medically trained. They don't understand what I just told you. They might be trying to sell what is on sale that day and what they need to move. So you have to have agency when you go into a shop and stand strong on what you need. If a nurse tells you what to get, make sure that you go in with a list and don't deviate from that. So it can be confusing for patients. And then get the certificate of analysis, making sure that the medicine has potency and purity. I talked about a little bit of these. They are driven by the terpenes. So indica is the terpenes that are more sedating and relaxing. Sativa strains are the more energizing ones. And you can find that out through the profile of the chemovar, which is what we call strains. And then Rick Simpson oil, this is something called RSO. This was a gentleman who treated his melanoma cancer with a highly concentrated oil that he made himself, and then put that into the marketplace, telling others about that. So you always want to work with somebody to teach you how to do high dosing with fully extracted cannabis oil, which is the other term for RSO or FSO, full spectrum oil. So some of this can be confusing. So, and I got these terms from Dr. Wayne Jonas. He's one of my heroes, a very integrative physician back on the East Coast that has amazing resources on holistic medicine for patients. And he has a Cannabis and Cancer Pocket Guide, which you can get. So always take the medicalized approach when you access cannabis products. We do an assessment of patients. When we work with somebody, we sit down and say, who are you? What are your goals and objectives? What are you dealing with? What are you taking already? What is your whole assessment look like? What are you eating? How are you moving? Who are you connected with? Are you setting boundaries and speaking up? Many times we're struggling with things that we need to voice, and suppressing things is what got us sick in the first place. So we teach you how to have agency and to use this as just another tool towards a fully integrative treatment plan. So we educate people on the different cannabinoids and so that you're cognizant when you go into the shop and know what you're going to get. Educate the modes of administration, those different routes that are available in the dispensaries, how to dose each one of them, and then minimums and maximums, and setting expectations. It's not a panacea, but it does help. So, we have to make sure that we're doing this right. And of course, tracking the efficacy, making those adjustments so that we can fine tune and dial in your success. So this is my firm. So we run a couple of different companies, holisticcaring.com. There is a free network that you can join. As soon as you go to the website, it says join the network. We have a free community. It's run by nurses and overseen by a pharmacist. We have patient self-paced programs. We have a free 7-page medical cannabis guide that you can just download on the website. We have a Green Nurse approved vetted CBD where all of these medicines have been tested. And then at LumiereClinic.com, this is a new venture that we are working on with our Australian partners, developing a medical cannabis clinic in several different countries in America, the United Kingdom, Australia, and more countries to come. But we're running a free nurse line to just be a triage, and talk about, are you appropriate for medical cannabis? How might this work? And how do you get started? So 970-404-HOPE. And then there's also the Lumiere CBD products, and then you can save some money. So also we have something called Clinical Conversations. In another 2 hours, I will be back on teaching happiness hacks on our YouTube channel. So you go to the Green Nurse YouTube channel, which you can get to through the webcast. You will be able to see us talking today about how to optimize our health and preventative wellness, neurotransmitters and dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, all of the ways that the endocannabinoid system can be modulated to help increase the good, decrease the bad, and get us back to a better day. So with that, I will stop my share, and we've got about 10 minutes for questions and etc. So hopefully that was helpful. Let me go into the chat. I haven't looked at that yet. So any first thoughts before we go to questions?
Very informative. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. You're welcome. All right, please use chat for questions. Can CBD be as helpful with pain from muscle tension as THC? Do you recommend topical or oral for muscle tension and pain? Well, yes, CBD can help. It's very anti-inflammatory. It can help with muscle tension and pain, but small amounts of THC can help. So if you have a good full spectrum oil as opposed to broad spectrum. So CBD comes in a few different ways. There's cannabis CBD at the dispensaries, which is 0.3% or more THC. There's hemp CBD, which is 0.3% or less THC. And there's broad spectrum CBD, where THC has been extracted and pulled out. And the reason for that broad spectrum is so that healthcare workers, federal employees, cops, firefighters, et cetera, can use broad spectrum CBD and not fail a drug test. So that's really why that's in there. But and then you use the topical on top. So a tincture inside, topical outside. Can you explain the different types of CBD, CBG cancer patients should utilize? A good blend, CBD, CBG is wonderful together. I have many patients taking them together, generally more CBD than CBD, CBG. You don't need as much CBG. It's a little bit stronger, but call the nurse line and we can talk about it. CBG is good for survival. All of these, there's not one that's better than the others. Again, I hope that maybe some of what I was talking about is really going to help you understand that entourage effect in wanting to use all of these cannabinoids. Are you stating that if you are on immunotherapy, one should not use cannabis? No, you can use small amounts of cannabis, but THC can be immunosuppressive. It's really immune modulating. So HIV patients can use THC to peak up their immune system, right? Rev things up and help it actually work better. So that's immune boosting. Most of it's immune suppression. When we think about how we can treat rheumatoid arthritis and psoriasis and some of these overactive autoimmune conditions, we want to suppress the immune system. THC and CBD can do that. So we just want to do this where we're monitoring things. So again, most of the cannabis doctors say that we can use 20, 25 milligrams, maybe a little bit more. So comfort dosing, palliative dosing. How can we know if we are getting a quality product since the FDA does not approve, regulate? This is why Green Nurse Approved is so important. We vet these products. We make sure there's a certificate of analysis, that there's batch testing, that there is that what they say is on the bottle is on the label. The FDA did a spot check and they found that 30% of the products out there did not have what was stated on the label. So you do want to make sure you're doing business with the right people. So again, call the nurse line and we can talk you through that. So it works better if you don't use enough to feel high. Well, that's exactly it. You want to work under that threshold of intoxication. So just enough to cause the symptom reductions, not too much to cause any side effects or feel high, unless that's your intention, right? So we work in a sweet spot, what I call that minimum effective dosing or the MED, and we need to find that. What do we know about interactions with aromatase inhibitors? We just want to be cautious, right? So we want to make sure that everything is done with monitoring. None of these are very they're not like pharmaceuticals. They're not like causing a severe reaction, severe interactions with prolonged dosing, with prolonged high doses. We can see some interactions, but really we're finding out about those through the Epidiolex trials. So CBD actually is an FDA-approved medication called Epidiolex. It's on the market for very rare seizure disorders for children, Lennox-Gastaut and Dravet syndrome, and they're finding dosing 800, 1,000, 1,200, 2,000 milligrams per day causes some liver interactions. When we're looking at 20 milligrams twice a day, we're not seeing that. So again, it's all about relativity. Avoiding THC, I want to keep my mind sharp. Small amounts of THC, 1-2 milligrams, can actually improve cognition. 20 milligrams is going to dull it. So again, it's all about dosing. Can CBD be good for asthma? I've had asthma since I was probably 10 years old, when I first went out for cross country and was running in the evenings in Chicago and started to get exercise-induced asthma, especially in the cold. And I was on inhalers and Advair for many, many years. Since I found CBD, I have not been using my Advair. After about 3 years of solid dosing, a couple hundred milligrams a day, I was getting my shoulder back to where I could move that again, using high doses of CBD and topicals, etc. And over time, I realized I didn't need my inhalers anymore. And inhaling, remember, cannabinoids can be bronchodilating. So CBD, a good vape, can actually expand the lungs. And so, you know, you have to just use what you see, and never take away your other medicines before you know. It's a slow wean. Every once in a while you'll say, I might not need as much of this. Try a little bit less, see how you feel, and then keep going. Tinctures are straight alcohol, which is not pleasant. There are alcohol tinctures. Remember, I said there's alcohol, there's MCT, there's olive oil, there's all kinds of tinctures. So the straight alcohol is the old school extract. That's the tincture. And if you're using an alcohol tincture, put it in a little water and just drink it down. Don't have it burn the mouth. My topical does help me sleep harder. Yay. Are there any side effects? Are the side effects temporary? I'm concerned about biphasic. Yes, side effects are temporary. So think about onset duration. The pharmacokinetics are how the body processes these nutrients, right? So there's an onset, there's a duration, right? And so in there we have distribution, metabolism, excretion, all of that takes a few hours. And there are different, an oral dose might take 8 hours, a tincture might take 4 hours, vaping might take 2 hours. So you can see, so is there a place we can purchase a cannabis tracking log? I give them to all my patients. I don't know if there's one on the market, but you can Google that. There are some cannabis journals. A lot of the cannabis journals that are out there for people to identify strains that are beneficial to them. Most of it was started with that. So there are some cannabis journals out there. Can Alzheimer's patients use this alternative treatment? Absolutely. On the LumiereClinic.com, there are patient programs. I have written every one of these. I started, back in 2017, I was hiring nurses, so I needed to write a training manual for those nurses. In San Diego, I was working with a palliative care physician, working with a lot of old patients that were having all kinds of things. We were able to give them better deaths, wean down some of the OxyContin, some of the opiates, and some of the neurodegenerative patients. I started seeing Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's patients. There was one beautiful woman who was on hospice with dementia. When I first saw her, was able to get her where she was not hallucinating. They were worried about THC and hallucinations. We were able to give THC to get rid of the hallucinations. And again, slow and step up in dosing, but we got her off hospice and she lived another 2 years. She actually started to toilet again. She started to eat again. Amazing things happen. But just when we're talking about Alzheimer's, looking at vasodilation, improved blood flow to the brain, can help with some of that, the symptoms and cognition. THC is being studied at the Salk Institute. We know that THC can help take away some of the beta amyloid plaques in the brain and minimize that because of CB2 activation. CB2 in the brain is the immune cells cleaning up the plaque. And what happens when neurodegenerative conditions go awry is that the brain is degenerating because it's not getting the neural protection. CBD is actually patented by the US government, not just CBD specific, but cannabinoids are patented. There's a 2003 patent filed by the NIH that cannabinoids are neuroprotectant antioxidants capable of slowing down neurodegeneration and healing the brain from ischemic insults like concussions, strokes, that sort of thing. We want to use cannabinoids to open up the brain flow and see if we can use that. Anyway, there's an Alzheimer's dementia program in the network that you can review and see. And all of the research for these programs are in there too. I did all the research like cannabis and cancer. What does all the research say? There's a whole lot of research in these programs that I want people to have access to. So they're all in the programs. I have had success with a 10 milligrams 1-to-1 gummy for sleep. Frustrated with the lack of guidance for maximizing my use. I've been dependent on Bud Tender for guidance. Well, I just told you that the bud tenders are retail employees. They don't know medicine. And so, you know, there are other options. And if you call the nurse line, that's all I can say. Which website can go? So go to holisticcaring.com, look at our YouTube channel. You will see the Green Nurse podcast. And in 2 hours, we will be on the air with happiness hacks. In Ohio dispensaries, you can purchase a flower. What is that? And how do you use flower? Well, flower is when the plant grows and you just trim those buds off the plant and you clean it up and you put it in a jar, that's flower. Flower can then be processed into tinctures and extracts and that sort of thing by a full extraction process. There's ethanol, there's CO2, there's all ways to extract this, which we can talk about. But flower is the source of everything. And of course, you want to make sure it's tested. In the dispensaries, everything has to be tested. Everything in a dispensary will have that certificate of analysis so you can make sure that it's free from contaminants and that it is safe to use. We can call the green nurse or who to get answers on what we need and how it makes us feel. I use Ohio dispensaries and need more medical information than they can offer, which is why I started my firm back in 2015 when I said I was still running sales at Anthem Blue Cross. I was the regional sales manager for the County of San Diego employee benefits for Anthem Blue Cross. I crashed my bicycle at the end of 2014 and went out on leave to have surgery. When I was in surgery, after surgery, I was introduced to CBD through my chiropractor. I went there and I had a medical massage, and this lady was talking about, well, she was using CBD in the oil. And I said, hey, what is this? It smells funny. And she says, it's cannabis. And I said, why are you using cannabis? And she goes, it's anti-inflammatory. It's going to get you back to that pre-surgical arm faster, help you get out of pain, inflammation, help the PT work better. And I'm like, how come nobody told me about this? And it's conventional care, right? They don't know anything about this. And so once and then she introduced me to CBD capsules, that was new capsules. It was just flash dried CBD, a couple $100 a bottle, but I tried it and it started working. I didn't need as much Motrin. I didn't need the muscle relaxants. And I'm like, this is something I really want to work in. And before you know it, I was in San Diego going to cannabis meetups, interacting with the industry. And I said, people are making medicines, people are selling medicines, but nobody's interpreting how to use them clinically for patients. I'm like, that's what I'm going to do. And I hung out my shingle, started my firm the next year, and it's been off and running. And that's why, I wrote the training manual. I wrote a book. I have a book on my website, Cannabis for Health, Become a Coach, which I'm training with healthcare professionals and patients. And then I wrote the Cannabis Health Coach program, which has everything in it for healthcare professionals. I have CEUs for nurses. So if you know any RNs, I became a provider for the Board of Registered Nursing here in California. So I am a provider to train nurses. There are 12 hours of continuing education for my big program, the Cannabis Health Coach. So nurses can get CE and other people can get that. And then all of the other patient programs they also have 2 hours of CE. So if a nurse wants to take just a patient program, I can also issue CE for that too. Okay, so interaction with immunotherapy allergy shots. I'm not sure about that. Call the nurse line and tell me what you're talking about, and we'll go through it. Can you recommend what is good for osteoarthritis? Any good full spectrum CBD is. On the Lumiere Clinic website, I have formulated all of these products. So the Lumiere Recover CBD has CBD, CBG, and CBN. CBD and CBG are very good anti-inflammatory. CBN is good for calming the neurochemistry, so it can relax and turn down some of the pain signaling. So all of that together is boosted by terpenes. And then also in that formulation, we have anti-inflammatory properties. So frankincense, turmeric, and ginger are in the Recover. So it's a botanical terpene cannabinoid multi-purpose oil that I created just for people in pain. Anyway, can you use if you have a pacemaker? Yes, you can. So there can be some atrial fibrillation. So people get the pacemaker for that. I would not use inhalation. I would not take THC and smoke a joint. No, you don't want to do that. Can you take CBD oils? Yes. Can you have some of the other phytonutrients, the full spectrum multi-cannabinoids? Absolutely. Can you microdose THC for pain? Yes. A couple of milligrams, 2.5 milligrams is under that therapeutic response of the psychoactive threshold. So 2.5 to 5 milligrams is generally where people start to say, I'm feeling a little bit of that intoxication. Under that, we can work without that. And if it's not perceptible, it shouldn't be problematic to the heart. But you do want to track it, right? So I have a Fitbit, and sometimes I will look at my heart rate and I will try something. And 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, what's the effect on my heart rate? How do I feel, etc. CEU for pharmacists. I am working with 2 pharmacists. I've given them an outline of everything I want them to create on the next module. I have contributing editors I've got a nutritionist. We're going to be doing programs on psychedelics. So there are a lot of things that are coming to the Holistic Caring website, but we don't have the pharmacist one available just yet. However, the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. So if you go to cannabisclinicians.org, they do have a pharmacist program, and there are CEUs for pharmacists somewhere else. So I'll always tell you about that. Not for chiropractors. What I'm going to be doing is working with a new company to get our programs to be accredited for all licenses. So whether you're a physician, I have a medical director that's joining our firm this month, which is going to be amazing. And we are going to get everybody, all of these programs accredited for all licenses, regardless of whether you're a chiropractor, acupuncture, naturopath. You need to be able to get CE to learn this. We're just not there yet. So all of this is under development. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you for all these questions. It's been a pleasure to talk with you. Anybody else, just call the nurse line and let us know how we can help you. That's the 970-404-HOPE, or just go to Holistic Caring or LumiereClinic.com. And on the LumiereClinic.com, I have a lot more in the Learn section that you can go through and really take benefit from. So I hope that you are all good to go. So thank you. You're welcome. God bless, and have a wonderful 2023.
Elisabeth, thank you so very much for sharing your time and your expertise with us. We greatly appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. All right. Thank you.